Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Roswell. I'm Mayor Mary Robichaux here in Roswell, Georgia. Today we're talking about something that will help shape Roswell for decades to come, the city's Comprehensive Plan 2045. I know that when people hear the words comprehensive plan, it sounds technical or complicated, but at its core, this plan is really about the future of Roswell, how we grow, how we preserve the character of our community, and how we address things such as transportation and development, and how we continue building a city residents are proud to call home. This process has involved extensive community engagement, stakeholder meetings, surveys, conversations with residents from across Roswell to help ensure the plan reflects the priorities and visions of our community. Joining me today is actually the chairman of the committee, Roswell City Councilmember Sells, who's obviously been actively involved in working with stakeholders throughout this process. So Councilmember Sells, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mayor.
For residents who may not be familiar with it, what exactly is the Comprehensive Plan 2045?
Well, it's a continuation of the plan that was done for the 2040, 5 years ago. That was the highest engagement plan that was done in Roswell history. They had a lot of community involvement. That one focused on protecting our residential areas. This one is interstitial. This midterm project is focused on economic development primarily. And so this plan, the three main reasons that we as mayor and council focus on economic development is really, there's three things in my view. There's Roswell residents' lifestyle. There are the jobs that fit the residents demographically as far as education and salary expectations. And then the third is our tax base. So those are the three reasons that we focus on economic development, and that's been the focus of this plan throughout.
So is this something that we just chose, I hate to call it, pull it out of the air that we wanted to do this, or was this something why we had to do this now?
Right. That's a great question. It's demanded by the state every 10 years. So this particular one is a voluntary, but yes, it's demanded every 10 years. And the purpose is really to sort of say to the larger development community, here's what we as a city want to see happen over the next 20 years.
So again, when people hear about, you're planning for 2045, that sounds really, really far away. So why should the residents even really care? They might not be here.
That's right.
They might have moved away by then.
Yeah. Well, if you go back 20 years and say in 2005, when they were doing that plan, the Coles was open, Studio Movie Grill was still open, the Catherine was still a gleam in Fuqua's eye. There was a lot of things going on. There was a lot of vibrancy. And without a purpose, things happen that we don't want to happen. And the Roswell residents have told us that they want us to bring economic development to our commercial areas.
What are some of the other topics that could be included in the plan? Because, with economic development, do y'all talk about transportation, about parks, about the traffic that certain types of economic planning could do, and housing? How do we make all that work together?
That's a great question. In this particular case, we're talking about a few areas, and I think we'll get into that in some of the future questions. But the traffic is certainly part of any economic development. We have to consider that. We're really focused on 5 major nodes in this particular plan. And so, there are some big changes, as we know, coming around those things. Traffic is a part of it. Mixed use is the watchword, and so that will include housing, of course. Quality of life for the residents is a big driver, and so it deals with all of those things, but not in a direct way. We're not making transportation policy or anything of the sort. We're talking about vision and strategy for the city writ large.
So how does the plan help to balance the growth while still protecting what, a lot of people really love about this city?
Right. Well, that's a great point. The last comp plan really focused on protecting our residential areas. And so some of the things around that concept were transition areas. So you've got a high-intensity area and you've got a residential area. You need to think about how you transition from those. And so we are trying to be intentional and specific about that. But this comp plan, like I said, is based on economic revitalization. So the stakeholders group in this particular plan focused on activity centers, as I described, the 5 activity centers, and the surroundings to identify the types of redevelopment that would fit for our community for these centers or character areas.
I think residents sometimes forget the limited, basically, areas available
Right.
for redevelopment for Roswell, because we are, we have quite a lot of residential, different types. So, when you talk about the five, I forget the percentages, and I don't know
Yeah,
if you had that off
I
the
do.
top
I
of your
do.
head.
I live and breathe it. It's about 14 or 15% of our total real estate is commercial. And when you pare that down and say how much actually trades in a given year or 4 years or whatever the case may be, the opportunities are very, very limited to make a difference. And so I call them rifle shots. It's a specific piece of property that we either know is going to come up or we think it's going to come up. And we're trying, to my mind, we're trying to find opportunities to fill that space that do those three things that are a requirement as I see them.
And some of it might also be that the current property owners of that might just want to know where, from the city's perspective, we might see how could that be enhanced.
Sure.
Which enhances their profits, but also is benefit to the city, would you say?
That's exactly right. So, we don't have any green fields, as they're called. So everything here is a brownfield redevelopment. And you're absolutely right. If the current property owner is not having some kind of, as Aristotle said, everything is done for some good.
Right.
Okay. So they're undertaking this for some good. Is it an economic good or is it a life change or something?
And it could be both.
It could be both, for sure. And so we have a bar to clear. I always go, we got to chin this bar that makes it worth the current landowner's time to separate himself from that land or to redevelop it with us or whatever the case may be. And so that we have to be mindful of that at all times.
So I think people sometimes get scared that this comprehensive plan will override council votes. Is that truth, or how does this process then work?
No, that's a great question. And I, as a citizen before I ran, and then even as a candidate, a lot of this was mysterious. There's a lot of things about the whole development process that's somewhat of a mystery to the average citizen. And this is really like a blueprint. It's really a statement of intent as a body, as the residents, the stakeholder committee representing the citizens, saying here's where we would like to see the city be in these areas, in these types of developments, and these kinds of things that we would like to have. And, that's instructive, but it's not precise.
Right.
And so when it comes down to a particular piece of property, we as mayor and council have to look at the wishes of the residents and the facts on the ground and then proceed from there.
Were other citizens able to give input, and how did they give input?
Sure. The stakeholder committee is a body that was I'm not even quite sure how they were appointed. And their first meeting, I guess they picked the noisiest guy and said, let's make him chairman. So I was appointed by voted on by the stakeholder committee. But there are a number of meetings, at least I think we've had 2 so far. I was out of town for one of them, but where we go through this whole process. And KB Advisors is leading this. And we did also an outreach by a survey kind of thing. So there's been a number of things. I always say people have a right to be left alone. If they want to ignore it, they can. But if you want to be involved, there's lots and lots of paths.
They've had lots of opportunities to give their input.
Exactly.
But so from your perspective, were there any common themes or priorities that consistently came up from the community, or was it kind of specific to the different nodes you're talking about?
I was really struck, and I think whether it's KB Advisors, the Stakeholders Committee, and staff, I mean, we were quite animated by the fact that Roswell's economic health is fading. And the discussion was where and what projects could we look at that would be catalytic for Roswell. So that was a real theme, and I think everybody sort of coalesced around it. And there was this one particular meeting where it's like, angels sang, we all got sort of the same point.
Good economic development, it doesn't happen overnight either. So you have to be planning. It's going to take anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 years for a concept to completion. From the concept of that shovel in the ground doesn't make it happen like that overnight either.
Right.
So people have to remember that, not just transportation projects, but same thing for builders, even in the private sector. No matter how much money they want to throw at something, it's going to take time to build it and see, the results of it.
I would say that's the biggest, when I think about the things, people ask me, what did you find most surprising when you ran? I would say everything takes longer and costs more than you think. And if you think about it as a city, different from a business, especially private enterprise, where I've been in private equity most of my professional career, you're dealing in small moves that you have total control over. Here, you have to basically build a military spec. The sidewalks have to be exactly so and so. The door heights have to be exactly so and so. And so it is a level of precision and time that is a surprise to the average business person who walks in and says, hey, we got to do all this stuff.
See, my background is healthcare, but also with the business side, you have to build it precisely. And we always knew that, but we also have to build in the contingencies because every single patient or person who walked in our doors something could be different about them. You build it for the standard and then have to be able to adjust, very quickly in my world. But we also planned out 15, 20 years out for those concepts, never knowing what technology is coming, kind of like you. You never knew what business is going to be hot 20 years from now. I mean, I think if somebody can tell us that, congratulations, we need to go buy their stocks. But
that's a good analogy, actually, your analogy, because that's sort of the comp plan to the mayor and council. You make this plan, but when you come down to the actual patient that walks in the door, you gotta say,
adjust.
Okay, well, I know that's where we want to go, but how do we make that apply to this particular patient?
Because it is. So as we talked about, this plan's not going to immediately change zoning or development rules, but can the plan itself, once it's set, now, I know we have to submit it to the state when and then it's there. Can the plan somewhat evolve? I mean, we're talking 20 years.
Sure. I would say it certainly can. Mayor and council have the statutory authority to make changes to the comprehensive plan. There's no question about that. But however, if we have done our work well, then it should be a strategy document that the residents have told us as a mayor and council that they want to see executed. And so we should do our best to hew towards it. Obviously, as you said with your patient, you're not going to let the patient die on the table because, I'm sorry, that's not in the strategic plan.
That's when you think about Roswell in 2045. So what are some of those the opportunities that you're most excited about that could be?
Well, again, like I said, the three reasons for mayor and council to deal with economic development, it's the lifestyle that we giving people places that they want to go, places they want to eat, things they want to do. Two, are we providing jobs? Are we attracting employers that fit the demographic of the Roswell citizens in terms of education and skill set and, age and stage and those kinds of things? And then the third thing is relieving the taxes. And so as I think about that specifically, and like we've talked about a couple times, there are literally 4 or 5 properties inside those nodes, which are areas or character areas or however you wish to describe them. They're certain areas. There are specific properties that trade, and there are 4 or 5 that are before us at this moment that, frankly, could be pillars of our economic life for the rest of through 2045. And so, making those kinds of choices are hard.
And again, what I will also say, some of the community meetings and things that I've seen, drawings, and I know they're just depictions. How did y'all make sure, because what I saw, you were trying to also ensure that even future generations still recognize Roswell as this community we are today. I mean, I know there'll be different economics, but the look, the feel, I saw that y'all were trying to balance that. How did y'all even
That's a great
consider
question.
that?
If we stick to that 14% of the property that is commercial, I don't think anybody is pleased with the economically and functionally obsolete centers that we have along Holcomb Bridge. So if that's our character area, or if that's our character, we definitely want to change it.
Right.
And so, that's in places, right? So there are other areas where the character of it is the whole value. And from, we raised our kids in Horseshoe Bend.
But I will also say what I saw, and again, it's artists, it's depictions, even along, so say that Holcomb Bridge corridor, things are depictions of things that could be. I know that they made it look like it was still Roswell and not, Buckhead or not something that wasn't Roswell. If that it was modern, it was updated, but it had a character or feel of a what I would call Roswell. Like you, I grew up, I'm in Country Club of Roswell, so again, very different than than historic. So it wasn't always historic, but it had a feel of the city of Roswell. How did y'all accomplish?
Well, so I'm trying to think of some good bumpers that you would say. Like, for instance, Roswell is not about super high rises.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
For instance,
like that. That's what I'm saying. I guess maybe y'all were very careful with that.
Exactly.
Concept
it's tempting, of course, when we talk about the taxes, the third leg of the stool that we as mayor and council should be focused on for our residents. We could maximize that and maybe do away with property taxes. Wouldn't that be a great day? But at the same time, nobody is looking to be in downtown Atlanta,
right?
If they wanted, so there's those kinds of guidelines, and then the other that's really front and center for me is there's a particular development. I won't name it, but in a prior generation, a decision was made to allow a particular housing development in what had been a commercial area, and it abuts other commercial areas. And the pressure from the residents is now to say, well, gee, we don't want commercial next to us. And so if we're Pac-Manning that 14% because we made a bad decision 20 years ago, that's a tough one. So we have to be really, really conscious about these transition areas and that kind of thing.
I think that's what I'm saying. Decisions made now can affect. But okay, so what was the most interesting thing you personally learned while working through this process?
The aha moment for Alan was in a particular transaction, a particular location. It's close to my house. I don't know if I should say it or not, but in any event, there's this one particular business location that has been literally derelict for quite some time. And the group said, well, Mr. Chairman, what would you do there? And, as I sort of paused and thought about all the things we've talked about in terms of the opportunities and the risks and the needs for the citizens and things like that, I was like, I don't have a good answer to what I'd like to see there, right? I don't have a good answer. And that was a surprise to me. I think as we as a group think about the development of Roswell economics, I call it in the private equity business, we say you got to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince. And, we need to be in the business of talking to the development community, the business community, because we never know which property is going to come up. And then we're trying to marry those and use the tools that we as a city have, the PFA, probably the TAD, we hope, knock on wood, other tools where we can have a seat at the table. Otherwise, we're just outside looking in.
But it's the same thing, again, going back to my analogy within the healthcare field, having been in medical research, you pull at any tool and sometimes you use things that you may not think we're not designed to do exactly that, but it could save that life or could make that go forward.
Yeah, I've hung me in a picture with my shoe.
So if you had one thing that you want residents to take away from this conversation about the comprehensive plan, what would you want it to be?
I would say the most important thing that we as a group need to understand that I certainly didn't understand and probably most don't is how little space we have for development. And so we need to be willing to court ideas that make some of these larger properties destinations for others, that drive economic revitalization. One of the jarring moments of the data that was presented to us with regard to Roswell's economics was there was this list that KB advisors had done of the top 10 attractions, destinations in North Fulton, including Sandy Springs. Okay, Roswell had one at number 9, and it was maybe 5% of the number 1. So it was pretty deep fall off, and it wasn't Canton Street. It was the supertarget on the Cobb County line. That's what it was. And so we as residents need to realize that we're going to have to think about these properties in real hard terms about what are we willing to do there to make those economically viable for 50 years.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about community input. So if residents, and as you said, some really don't really want to get involved in it, but those residents that do want to continue to stay involved in this process and all, how can they do that?
That's a great question. I asked myself that about 5 years ago, and my wife's asking me that at this point in time. So
I'm not sure many of them want to run for office. You and I both know that.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if that's staying involved as much as are we really?
Yeah.
No, but
run for office.
Yeah, well, that's one way. But I meant
vote.
Someone who doesn't want to vote.
Run for office, vote, volunteer for a committee or commission. Come to meetings.
Right.
This level of government is the most approachable on the planet. Mm-hmm. I have had people say incredibly nice things to me and incredibly mean things to me on the street in the last 24 hours.
I have them. They come they come grocery shopping with me now.
Yeah.
So, well, my husband and I have arranged so that if I'm going to just go do a regular grocery shopping, it's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes longer because I just invite him to walk with me and we talk.
Exactly.
If I have to get something quick, I send Rory. So you go get it because that way
Exactly.
I can get out. But I'm sorry. So again, I think, stay involved. I mean, I think that is obviously important because, it affects all of our lives, not just yours and mine. It affects all of us. We've both been residents here for a long time, and we have that. And we all love this city, so we all want it to thrive. So, Alan, thank you again for taking the time to join us and help break down what the Comprehensive Plan 2045 really means for our community.
You're welcome.
I think one of the biggest takeaways from today's conversation is that the plan is ultimately about preparing thoughtfully and responsibly for Roswell's future while trying and continue to protect the character, quality of life, and the sense of community that makes Roswell such a special place. It's also a reminder that residents' feedback truly does matter. As he said, we've done surveys. We're continuing to do those outreach community meetings. And I've seen Alan, they give us all the little sticky notes that we could go put on. And then people do take those sticky notes and put them in that are presented to this board. So, and that really does matter that we want to hear. And we're all not going to agree on everything. That the community, that's what we've seen. Different people want different things, but we need to know what people do want. So the community voices are playing an important role throughout this process. So to the residents, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Inside Roswell. We hope these conversations continue to help you better understand the work that's happening within our City Hall and the decisions that are shaping Roswell's future and how they're made. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share this podcast wherever you listen, and we'll see you the next time in Inside Roswell.